It's February 1981. Patricia Clark is watching a basketball game with her husband, Joe, who works for the Washington County Sheriff's Department. When he gets up to go to the kitchen, Patricia hears what sounds like an explosion. She finds Joe collapsed on the floor from what she thinks is a heart attack. The shocking truth would take 33 years to uncover.
Joe Clark was well known throughout the law enforcement community, so it was a big shock.
At that point, they say that Joe had been shot. He'd been ambushed in his own home. You just don't believe it. It changed everybody's outlook and responsibilities. First thing you want to do immediately is secure the crime scene.
I started on Joe's house. That night, Joe's wife heard a pop from the kitchen. She thought the light bulb had just blew. She saw Joe on the floor. There was a little bit of blood. She thinks his head hit the counter. And I looked around. And there's a plate glass window in his kitchen. The window was gone. And that's when I see the pellets. There were pellets from a shotgun. And I was beginning to make sense of what happened. The person had gone around the back of Joe's house to where the plate glass window was. The shot came from a shotgun from outside that window at an upward angle. Some of the pellets struck Joe and killed him.
On the night of the murder, the officers identified more than 10 witnesses who had seen a blue Ford Pinto parked in the area of the crime scene. Every witness stated that it was idling. As they drove by, the driver of the car would put his hand up in a motion similar to what I'm doing to cover his face.
We knew that there's no way the guy could have shot and ran into the vehicle in that amount of time. We believed that there was two people involved, one in the vehicle and one that did the shooting.
The next day, at the crime scene, I found a military combat boot print. Also left at the scene was a number 4 buck shotgun shell.
So basically at the scene, there wasn't a whole lot of physical evidence to collect.
During Joe's short career with the sheriff's office, I knew he had a lot of passion in combating the drug use in Washington County.
Clark did an interview talking about the presence of narcotics that was suspected in the area.
He said he was going to be naming names the following week and arresting people. He was interviewed that Friday. The article came out the day he was killed. We said, this has got to be drug-related. 3 days after the homicide, I get a call from the dispatch center. Somebody got shot at this trailer park. I pull up. I'm the first one there. I found the victim on the floor. He was a drug dealer. Another drug-related murder. That's too big a coincidence. I separate the drugs from the non-drug leads, and I talk to members of the drug community, users, dealers, informants. An informant gave me the 2 names, Mr. Washington and Mr. Jones. He told me they shot the drug dealer in the face. I think that Washington and Jones was the same people responsible for the homicide of Joe Clark. Washington and Jones was from the Cuyahoga County area. We got a hold of the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office, and he said, I'm very familiar with him, and I have him in jail right now. I I said, we're on our way. I said, you all know why I'm here. I said, I want something. You got information. I said, tell me about the shooting at the trailer park. He goes, it was just supposed to be a ripoff. Ripoff turned into shooting. They also said that Mr. Bonner had set it all up. I interviewed Bonner. I said, well, you know, I come here talking about Joe. He said, don't know anything about it, wish I could help you. And I asked him, well, what about the drug dealer got shot? He said, I ain't got nothing to do with it. You cannot charge somebody solely on the testimony of a co-conspirator or co-defendant. So if he don't talk, I got nothing on him. And he didn't. I had doubts and thoughts running in my mind. I followed up every lead I could. I wasn't getting anywhere. I can't do it. So I quit and I went on. It was my first homicide, and I didn't solve it. That's not right. And that's what's haunted me.
Sheriff Minks asked me if I'd be interested in starting up a cold case unit, and I accepted. When we took over the case again, it was over 30 years old.
Lieutenant Clark's house, after he was murdered, was occupied by several families, but the interior walls were never moved. So we asked BCI to bring their scan system in. Based on the imaging done at the house, it was believed that the shooter stood behind a tree within 31 feet of the house, below the window where Joe was standing.
Joe was stalked. It was a sniper-type murder, and we felt that there was some type of a grudge. Just getting to the location and staging himself, that takes a lot of nerve. The person who committed the murder knew what he was doing. It was an excellent shot.
After shooting various lengths of 12-gauge shotguns, what we were able to determine was the shotgun we were looking for was a shotgun used by law enforcement personnel.
What police officer would want to kill Joe Clark?
The original investigators never actually looked at another police officer, but we knew about an incident that happened back in 1981 with Matt Bonner. Several months before the murder of Clark, Mr. Bonner had been arrested for breaking and entering. En route back to the sheriff's office, Mr. Bonner continued to maintain his innocence.
And then the deputy took him down to the bank of the Ohio River. He struck him a couple times with his fist.
Bonner filed a complaint for abuse against the deputy. Lieutenant Clark was involved in launching the investigation into a deputy named Mitch Rubel.
Clark made the determination to fire Mitch Rubel.
And I remember one of the deputies said that Rubel was extremely upset that night. He does fit the profile in this investigation.
Mitch Rubel comes from a military background. He served in Vietnam.
Mitch Rubel was a gun fanatic.
He was driving the sheriff's department to issue number 4 buck in their shotguns.
Also, through our investigation, we found out that Mitch drove a blue Pinto, but it was registered in his wife's name. We contacted Mitch Rubel and asked him if he'd come to the sheriff's office so we could interview him. On the night of the murder, Mitch had an alibi. He told us that there was a guy named Todd Smith and that he had stayed with him that night.
So, of course, we wanted to question Todd Smith.
So me and John went and interviewed him, and we talked to him in my unmarked patrol car. He admitted that Mitch had spent the night there, but they said they didn't go nowhere, but we didn't believe that. We interviewed him for about 4 hours.
Only when we offered him police protection did he finally open up and say, I'll tell you the story.
Todd was at his apartment, and Mitch knocked on the door. Mitch asked him, do you have any of these shotguns here at the house? And Todd had one that Mitch had given him earlier, and he asked for that shotgun.
He gives it to Rubel. They get in Rubel's blue Ford Pinto. They go by Lieutenant Clark's house. Rubel gets out of the vehicle.
Todd sits there and he waits. He said he waited there so long, and he was starting to get scared and starting to get frightened.
Smith goes back to his house,
A short time later, Rubel showed up to Smith's house.
at which point Rubel starts threatening him. Todd Smith provided us enough information that our belief was that Mitch Rubel was likely the shooter. We're going to do everything in our power to recover the murder weapon.
Todd Smith told us that one of Mitch Rubel's military buddies owned it at that time.
We learned that Mitch Rubel's Air Force buddies were having a yearly reunion at a military museum near Columbus, Ohio. We go out and talk with each of these military friends. The last door we knocked on, we asked if he had ever purchased a weapon off of Mitch Rubel. And the gentleman stated that he had.
The gun was so unique, and there were so few of them out there, that we believed we had the right gun. It was a needle in the ocean that we found. Mitch Rubel had been terminated by Lieutenant Clark, so he has the motive to kill him.
And now we got the murder weapon, so we knew it was time to execute the arrest of Mitch Rubel for the murder of Lieutenant Joe Clark.